Have you ever gazed at a contemporary gadget and wondered, who in the world approved this? Brace yourself for a revelation, because today we are unearthing 33 historical inventions that are so incredibly misguided, so wonderfully eccentric they make your quirky uncle's garage projects appear to be sheer brilliance. Forget about progress that makes sense. We are plunging straight into a cavalcade of sheer unfiltered. Why was this ever made? Prepare yourself for hearty laughter and a few genuine moments of astonishment. First up, let's kick off our showcase of historical "what were they thinking" occurrences. Let's wriggle our way back to the time of the vibrating belt machine. Visualize this. You're strapped into a cumbersome device with a thick canvas belt snugly wrapped around your wobbliest areas. Before we continue, kindly hit like, subscribe to our channel, and share a comment below indicating your location. Then flip a switch, and the machine begins to jiggle, shake, and relentlessly assault you with vibrations. The enticing promise: effortlessly shed fat, tone your muscles, and eliminate cellulite, all while you stood there resembling someone auditioning for a role as a paint mixer. These contraptions were ubiquitous, found in gyms, salons, and even home catalogs. People truly believed they could be vigorously vibrated into shape. It was less of a fitness breakthrough and more like an invitation to have your internal organs rearranged by an overly enthusiastic piece of equipment. The only thing it consistently burnt was electricity, and perhaps your sense of dignity. 2. Do you know what was glaringly absent from movies back in the day? A good solid whiff of, well, whatever aroma the director fancied. Introducing smell-vision and its equally aromatic rival, aroma, all from the ambitious eras of the 1950s and 60s. The idea was sheer olfactory enthusiasm. Infuse specially crafted scents into the cinema at pivotal moments to immerse the audience completely. A scene with a field of flowers. You'd get a floral bouquet, a pie baking. The sweet aroma of cinnamon wafts through the air. The hitch technology, as it often does, had alternative plans. Scents would hang around, mash into a grotesque medley, or arrive comically tardy, making crowds sniff for roses while witnessing a car crash. Visualize the scent of a battlefield mingling with a sweet first kiss. It was less of a sensory enhancement and more of a nasal assault, proving that certain cinematic experiences are better appreciated through just sight and sound. The entire endeavor simply stunk. 3. Now, here's an invention that will leave you astounded, then prompt you to hold your children extra tight and appreciate contemporary safety measures. Hailing from the delightfully quirky 1930s, I present to you baby cages. Yes, you heard it right. We are discussing actual wire cages intended to be fixed to the exteriors of apartment windows, enabling infants to absorb their daily share of fresh city air while suspended several stories above the unforgiving pavement. Because apparently a gentle breeze combined with exhaust fumes and the looming danger of gravity constituted ideal parenting, marketed to urbanites craving space. These contraptions resembled something you might use to air out a particularly difficult pet rather than a human baby. One shudders at the thought of what a sudden gust of wind or an overly inquisitive pigeon could have caused. Thankfully, this high-altitude anxiety-inducing parenting hack eventually faded into oblivion. 4. Do you have a deadline looming over you? Struggling to focus with all those distractions in play? Well, forget about your noise-canceling headphones, because back in 1925, Hugo Gernsback, the pioneer of science fiction, introduced the isolator helmet. This wasn't a sleek, futuristic visor. Oh no. This was a massive, daunting metal helmet seemingly forged in the fires of Mount Doom that enveloped your entire head. It promised total sensory deprivation with robust soundproofing and vision limited to 2 tiny eye slits aimed squarely at your work. It even came with a designated oxygen supply, because the sheer intensity of focus might cause you to forget essential bodily functions like breathing. You would look less like a productive employee and more like a perplexed movie villain plotting world domination, or perhaps just a very bewildered welder. Unsurprisingly, the primary thing it isolated people from was their dignity. 5. Have you ever dreamt of possessing your very own flying device soaring splendidly above those stuck in traffic? The 1950s attempted to deliver with the Hiller VZ-1 Penny, or as it is more charmingly known, the flying platform. Imagine this. You standing gallantly atop what is, in essence, a gigantic exposed fan aimed at the ground. Control was established by daringly shifting your body in the preferred direction, akin to attempting to steer a wild bronco that also operates as a military-grade leaf blower. The concept was that a soldier could simply mount it and elegantly float over various obstacles. Elegance was certainly not part of its terminology. Pilots appeared as if they were engaged in a perilous interpretive dance just to prevent themselves from becoming a rapidly plummeting lawn dart. It emitted the sound of a swarm of furious metallic bees gargling gravel, likely delivering an unexpected haircut and an overwhelming urge to prey to anyone unfortunate enough to be beneath it. Eventually, the military concluded that having 2 feet firmly planted on solid ground wasn't such a terrible option after all. You might assume that a certified genius like Thomas Edison, the man largely credited with inventing the modern world, would possess the Midas touch, wouldn't you? Well, brace yourselves, because not every idea he had was a light bulb moment. In the early 1900s, Edison developed an obsession with the concept of concrete, not merely for construction, but for everything imaginable. He envisioned entire homes cast from a single mold complete with concrete furniture. Yes, you could own a stylish concrete bathtub, an appealing concrete staircase, and even a whimsical concrete piano to amuse your guests, assuming they were up for the risk of permanent butt impressions from your concrete couch. The aspiration was for affordable, durable housing. The reality was that the molds were astronomically costly. The homes were damp, chilly, and as customizable as a brick. Stubbing your toes against a concrete bedpost was likely a daily soul-sucking affair. It was a heavy concept that thankfully never fully materialized. Now gather close, gentlemen, for an account of grooming that went horribly and hilariously awry in the late 19th century. Forget about your fancy 5-blade razors and soothing aftershaves. Get ready for the group shaving machine. Because why bother shaving solo when you can partake in a coordinated, potentially life-threatening facial hair removal ceremony with 11 of your nearest pals? The device supposedly required men to sit in a circle with their chins resting on designated supports, while a central mechanism powered a series of blades or abrasive brushes. One sneeze, one hiccup, or one slightly misaligned mechanism, and you'd find yourself in a scene straight out of a low-budget horror flick. Beyond the obvious hygiene issues, sharing blades anyone, the sheer potential for catastrophic mishaps renders this one of history's most alarmingly foolish inventions. Thank goodness for personal safety and individual razors. Next up, from the brilliant minds of France in 1932, comes an invention that boldly posed, why excel at one thing on land when you can be awkwardly futile at 2 things, both on land and water? Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the cyclo-maker. This was an amphibious bicycle, a masterwork of misplaced ambition. On solid ground, it functioned as a regular bike, but when you added its 2 enormous hollow drum-like wheels, which doubled as floats, you might think you were ready to pedal across the local duck pond, at least in theory. Anyway, reports suggest it was akin to attempting to ride a particularly stubborn hippopotamus on land due to the cumbersome floats. In water, it maneuvered with the glacial speed of a snail recovering from a hearty meal, steered by a separate, equally clunky rudder. It was the ultimate transportational enigma. Designed for flexibility, yet excelling only at being entertainingly impractical in every imaginable setting. Now step right up, ladies and gentlemen, and prepare to be astonished by an 18th century engineering marvel that perplexed kings, queens, and even Napoleon Bonaparte himself. I refer to the mechanical Turk, a life-sized mannequin of a Turk donned in Ottoman robes, seated at a cabinet poised to play chess and triumph. This was no mere clumsy automaton. The Turk played with remarkable skill, strategy, and a flair for the theatrical. It toured Europe and America for many years, captivating audiences of its era. How did it function? Magic early AI? Nope. The great secret, unveiled much later, was that a human chess master was cleverly concealed inside the cramped, ingeniously designed cabinet, pulling levers and executing moves. It was less of a technological wonder and more like the world's most elaborate and enduring practical joke. Imagine the poor soul sweating profusely within, likely grumbling at every bishop and pawn, all for the sake of a grand illusion. The world's greatest chess-playing robot was in fact merely a very dedicated, extremely cramped human being. Now picture yourself as a refined smoker in, say, the early 20th century. You appreciate a good cigarette. But what transpires when the heavens open up? Catastrophe. Your cherished smoke becomes damp. your reputation takes a nosedive. What's a stylish individual supposed to do? Worry not. For some brilliant mind, whose identity has regrettably been lost in the absurd pages of history, invented the cigarette holder umbrella. This wasn't just any umbrella, oh no. This was a diminutive umbrella designed to attach directly to your cigarette holder, providing shelter solely for the burning cigarette from the merciless grim weather. Just visualize it. An adult earnestly shielding a lone cigarette with a humorously small umbrella while everything else around them gets drenched. It demonstrates a level of commitment to one's indulgences that is nearly commendable if it weren't so completely ludicrous. The sheer imagery of this device in action is bound to make you laugh. Priorities, folks, priorities. Fast forward to the vibrant 1,970 seconds, a time of voluminous hairstyles and even more outrageous fashion blunders. You've dedicated hours to teasing, spraying, and perfecting your magnificent bouffant or flowing Farrah Fawcett hairstyle. Now it's time for a shower. The horror. How do you shield your carefully styled hair from the onslaught of water and steam? Introducing the shower hood. This wasn't just a stylish cap. This was a hefty plastic bag that encased your entire head, cinching tightly around your neck, making you resemble someone either gearing up for a hazardous waste operation or ready to be blasted into space from your bathtub. Practical. Perhaps if you weren't bothered by the sensation of claustrophobia and the high likelihood of emerging looking like a steamed vegetable. Fashionable. Absolutely not. This invention screamed, "My hair takes precedence over my right to breathe easily or to see where I'm headed." Moving on. Driving in the early 20th century was rather treacherous. Vehicles were still novel, brakes were often unreliable, and pedestrians, well, they had a tendency to get in the way. So what was the thoughtful, safety-minded response? The pedestrian catcher, of course. Fastened to the front of cars, these mechanisms were basically large scooping devices, sometimes resembling a grotesque cow catcher from an old-time train designed to softly collect any unfortunate individual wandering into the vehicle's path. Picture being gently gathered by a moving metal scoop. The advertisements probably proclaimed decreases pedestrian fatalities by turning them into unwilling hood ornaments. It's a testament to the period's rather harsh method of problem solving. Thankfully, attention eventually turned towards better brakes and educating people not to play chicken with a vintage Ford Model T. Moving on, long before the advent of electric toothbrushes, even before reliable manual ones, dental care was a chaotic landscape filled with peculiar ideas. Enter the tooth polisher, a rather alarming contraption from the Victorian era that typically featured a handle with a rotating head, sometimes crafted from leather felt or even ivory, to which you'd apply a tooth powder. Some versions were manual, needing vigorous cranking or rubbing, while others even operated on a clockwork mechanism. Visualize winding up your toothbrush like a toy soldier readying for battle against plaque. Its effectiveness was questionable, and the risk of gum irritation was likely pretty high. It was a far cry from the gentle vibrations we have today, more akin to using a power tool on your pearly whites. You'd certainly feel as if you'd accomplished something with your teeth, though. Whether that was beneficial is a different matter altogether. Moving on to Hollywood in the 1930s. The golden age of glamour, where perfection was not merely desired, it was painstakingly crafted. And how did they accomplish this? With the beauty micrometer? Naturally. Invented by the illustrious Max Factor himself. This intimidatingly medieval metal contraption was fastened onto an actress's head. It included a complex series of flexible metal strips and screws that could be adjusted to measure every contour, each curve, and every alleged flaw of her face down to tiny fractions of an inch. The aim was to pinpoint areas that required enhancement with makeup to achieve the mathematically flawless visage. It felt less like a beauty instrument and more like a device intended to extract confessions or recalibrate your skull. Can you picture the pressure of sitting there while someone meticulously quantifies your imperfections? It serves as a stark, slightly unsettling reminder of how peculiar the quest for beauty can be. Time to move on. Were you anxious about street crime during the vibrant 60s? Are you fed up with wicked villains attempting to steal your handbag? Well, a few creative thinkers have introduced the anti-bandit bag, a purse with a notably fierce demeanor. These bags were not your typical purses. If a thief tried to escape with one, it would retaliate. Certain models could even release plumes of smoke. Others would spray permanent dye, and some, especially the more spirited designs, were equipped with a chain that could spring out, effectively handcuffing the would-be thief to the bag itself. Picture this scene: a startled pickpocket suddenly tied to a furious dye-spewing handbag. While the concept of a self-defending fashion accessory is rather amusing, the real-world implications could get quite messy. Unexpected discharges in packed areas, staining your own attire, and being continually attached to your shopping were all potential issues. It was certainly a daring, albeit slightly extravagant method of ensuring personal safety. Nom. Ah, the eternal quest for adorable facial features. Back in the year 1936, if you weren't naturally endowed with charming dimples, there was no need to lose hope. You could simply buy the dimple-maker. This delightful device was a springy metal contraption that you would wear on your face. It had two small knobs or pads that pressed firmly into your cheeks, supposedly promoting the formation of dimples through sheer force of will and constant pressure. Users were encouraged to wear it for lengthy periods. The outcome: likely sore cheeks, transient indentations, and a deep sense of disappointment rather than a couple of perky dimples. It's a classic example of aspiration triumphing over biological reality and serves as a reminder that some beauty trends belong firmly in the "what were they thinking" category. One can only envision the conversations. "What's that on your face?" "Oh, just my cheek torture device. I mean dimple-maker." Numb. War is a harrowing experience. During the epochs of World War, the threat of chemical warfare was frighteningly tangible. How do you shield the most defenseless, like infants, from such a concealed adversary? Well, you create the gas mask stroller. This was not your ordinary pram with a bit of extra cushioning. This was a fully sealed, often coffin-like carriage, complete with its own air filtration system and a viewing window that made the baby appear like a tiny, confused astronaut on a very grim mission. Some models were genuinely nightmarish, resembling something pulled from a post-apocalyptic horror story. While they were created out of an authentic and desperate need for safety, the sight of these devices serves as a chilling reminder of darker moments and the extraordinary lengths to which people went to confront unimaginable dangers. It's an invention that perfectly embodies fear and ingenuity, all wrapped up in one very peculiar package. Numb. The aspiration for a vehicle that can also traverse water is a timeless one. Why select between land and sea when you can have both? Enter the Amphar, a German innovation from the 1960s that promised just that. It resembled a somewhat bathtub-shaped car, and with a flick of a couple of levers, its wheels would retract and propellers would kick in, transforming your regular ride into a rather slow boat. The issue was it was not a particularly reliable car on land, frequently leaking and lacking speed. And it wasn't much better as a boat on water, being sluggish, cumbersome, and surprise, prone to leaks. Owners often quipped, it was the fastest car on water and the quickest boat on land. It was a master of compromise that went awry. A charmingly flawed novelty that demonstrated how trying to excel in two areas often results in mediocrity in both. Numb. Roller skates are entertaining, but what if they were faster, louder, and considerably more hazardous? Early 20th century inventors, clearly driven by an excess of boldness and a lack of concern for ankle safety, decided to attach small gasoline engines directly to roller skates. Yes, motorized roller skates? Envision the chaos. You speeding down the sidewalk with small, sputtering engines affixed to your feet, attempting to keep your balance, dodge pedestrians, and refrain from setting your pants ablaze. Control was minimal. Brakes were an afterthought, and the noise must have been deafening. It was less a convenient form of transport and more an extreme sport for those who found traditional roller skating too mild. These inventions were a brilliant testament to humanity's unyielding pursuit of attaching engines to just about anything that moves or doesn't. Numb. Long before virtual reality headsets became sleek and somewhat common, the 1960s provided a fascinating preview of what wearable displays might look like with the telev, far from the sleek augmented reality glasses we might envision today. Picture more like affixing two small, low-resolution television screens directly against your eyes, encased in an awkward helmet-like device that likely weighed more than your actual head. While the intention was to deliver a personal, immersive television experience, the actual outcome probably involved eye strain, severe headaches, and the constant anxiety of colliding with walls, as your peripheral vision was essentially a faded recollection. It was a valiant, albeit cumbersome, leap toward creating a more individual viewing experience, but it appeared incredibly uncomfortable and likely made the person resemble a budget cyborg, struggling with a serious television dependency. The future was indeed approaching, but it came with a hefty weight that strained your neck. 21. The Cold War Era. A period filled with nuclear anxiety, bomb shelters, and, ironically, radiation-resistant underwear. Yes, you read that correctly. During a time when the specter of nuclear destruction was ever present, some clever or perhaps exploitative companies took it upon themselves to promote undergarments, said to provide protection from dangerous radiation. These were not lead-lined garments, mind you. Typically, they resembled ordinary briefs or panties made from a peculiar fabric or lining that allegedly had radiation-blocking capabilities. Did these undergarments genuinely work? Most likely not in any significant manner against an actual nuclear explosion or substantial radioactive fallout. More realistically, they served as a psychological placebo, providing a flimsy layer of fabric against an unseen dreadful threat. It's a rather odd and poignant demonstration of how fear can spark the creation of certain questionable consumer items. Because when nuclear bombs are about to drop, your primary concern is indeed your underwear. 22. Fed up with the tedious task of washing your own hair. So were individuals in the 1930s, it seems, paving the way for the advent of the automatic hair washing machine. This was no sleek salon gadget. Instead, it looked like a colossal helmet-like apparatus straight out of a mad scientist's lab. You would sit down as this enormous dome descended over your head. Then, ideally, a range of nozzles would release water shampoo and rinse, while perhaps some terrifying mechanical fingers massaged your scalp. Or maybe it would just bombard you with high-pressure jets of water. The advertisements promised convenience and an impeccable clean. However, the reality might have included water flooding your ears, soap stinging your eyes, and an overwhelming sensation of being trapped in a malfunctioning car wash specifically for your head. It truly makes you appreciate the straightforward beauty of a bottle of shampoo and your own two hands. 23. A time of chivalry when gentlemen would always tip their hats to ladies. But what if you were forgetful or your arms were burdened with, say, more unsuccessful inventions? Worry not. The self-tipping hat machine was there to rescue your social standing. This inventive, if somewhat over-engineered, apparatus was often concealed within the hat or connected by a discrete string designed to automatically lift your hat at just the right instant, perhaps activated by a nod or a minor gesture. Because manually tipping your own hat was evidently an overwhelming responsibility. Imagine the comedic potential for awkward mishaps. Your hat enthusiastically greeting every lamppost or energetically saluting a passing dog. It sought to automate etiquette, which usually indicates that etiquette itself is struggling. A genuinely fashionable answer for those who are exceptionally lazy or socially awkward. 24. Envision a smoke-filled gathering in the early to mid-20th century. The air is dense, thick enough to cut through. Your eyes are stinging, and you're reasonably sure you just inhaled someone else's entire cigarette. But stepping away from the enlightening conversation is simply not an option. What's a social butterfly to do? Why not whip out your personal, portable rebreather designed for such smoky environments? Naturally, these diminutive devices, often resembling a small gas mask or peculiar metal snorkel, were engineered to allow you to inhale fresh air, or at least air that was slightly less suffocating, without ever leaving the room. You would appear utterly absurd, resembling a fish out of water striving desperately to filter the toxic atmosphere. But hey, at least you wouldn't miss any intriguing gossip. It was a peculiar approach to addressing a problem that could have easily been remedied by a quick step outdoors. But where's the excitement in that? 25. Sunglasses certainly add a cool factor. Venetian blinds serve a practical purpose for windows, so it's no wonder that someone had the inventive thought to fashion them into sunglasses. Indeed, picture tiny, slatted blinds similar to those on your windows, but scaled down and attached to a pair of eyewear frames. The intention was likely to shield your eyes from the sun, yet the outcome resulted in your viewing the world through a series of narrow horizontal gaps. This offered remarkable protection if the sun shone directly ahead, and you had no need to see anything else like an approaching bus or the sidewalk you might trip on. Trendy, open to debate, functional, and highly questionable. They combined the flair of window coverings with the visibility akin to peering through a fence. A genuine success of style over, well, practically everything else. 26. For the smoker who deemed that enjoying one cigarette at a time was far too slow and ordinary, there existed the chain-smoking apparatus. This was not merely an extravagant cigarette case, it was a contraption, often a modified pipe or a peculiar multi-pronged holder that enabled the user to smoke several cigarettes at once. Because why relish one when you could inhale the fumes of 5, 10, or even an entire pack at the same time? Visualize someone strolling down the street looking like a human chimney puffing away on a bouquet of smoldering tobacco. It was the ultimate proclamation for the dedicated nicotine connoisseur, a monument to excess, and likely a fast track to an epic coughing fit. Health warnings clearly had not yet made an impression when this contraption was designed. 27. The 50s were a time brimming with optimism surrounding atomic energy. It was destined to power our cities, homes, and naturally our vehicles. Enter the Ford Nucleon, a concept vehicle that was truly indicative of its time. This wasn't a hybrid, it was a fully nuclear-powered automobile. The concept involved a compact, self-contained nuclear reactor situated in the trunk designed to deliver years of emission-free driving on just one charge of uranium. What could possibly go wrong with having a miniature Chernobyl reactor just a few feet from your backside, separated only by a thin layer of what we hope was robust shielding? Accidental fender benders in parking lots would have taken on a whole new realm of catastrophic possibilities. While it never progressed beyond the concept phase, thankfully, the Ford Nucleon remains a hilariously absurd reflection of atomic age, enthusiasm, and a chilling what-if scenario. 28. Do you need to transport heavy cargo across incredibly rough landscapes where roads barely exist? Forget wheels, you require legs. In the 60s, General Electric introduced the walking truck, officially termed the cybernetic anthropomorphic machine. This four-legged 3,000-pound behemoth resembled something plucked from Star Wars, a less glamorous relative of the AT-ST walker. The operator sat inside, maneuvering the legs with hand and foot actions that imitated walking. It was a remarkable engineering achievement. The downside was its painfully sluggish pace, only maxing out at a breakneck 5 mph. Astonishingly intricate to operate and guzzled fuel as if there were no tomorrow. While it could step over hurdles, it mostly proved that sometimes sticking to wheels is a much simpler solution. It embodied a massive, lumbering, captivating failure. 29. In the relentless pursuit of better sleep, humanity has attempted some genuinely bizarre solutions. Take, for instance, the anti-snoring devices from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These were not subtle nasal strips. We are discussing elaborate mechanisms of straps, buckles, and chin supports that were designed to physically secure your jaw shut or contort your head into a position deemed snore-proof. Some resembled medieval muzzles, while others looked like intricate harnesses for a very small horse. Imagine striving for a restful night's sleep while restrained like a Thanksgiving turkey. The only certainty was likely a stiff neck, a sore jaw, and a partner who remained awake either due to your lingering grunting or from silently chuckling at your absurd headgear. Sweet dreams were likely not included. 30. Fashion and safety. Two notions that do not always coexist seamlessly, particularly in the 1,920 seconds. As an example, the inflatable life vest blouse. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary, perhaps even chic blouse concealing a surprising secret. In an emergency, imagine your leisurely cruise ship suddenly decides to play the role of a submarine. You could engage a mechanism that causes parts of the blouse to inflate, transforming it into an impromptu life preserver. Picture the scene at an elegant dinner, gathering aboard the ship. Oh dear, are we taking on water? Excuse me while my shoulders expand dramatically? While the concept of integrated safety features is admirable, the realization of it must have been quite shocking and not particularly flattering for one's figure. It was a fashion declaration that proclaimed, "I'm ready for anything and I don't mind looking a tad silly while doing so." Surfing is awesome, but what if you're miles away from the shoreline or there aren't any decent waves around, dude? Initial efforts to address this challenge led to the invention of the artificial surf machine, or the early wave pools. Forget about the perfectly crafted barrels we see nowadays. We're referring to massive concrete basins where machines would labor to create something that resembled a usable wave. More often than not, these waves were either feeble ripples that wouldn't even threaten a rubber duck, or wild surges of water eager to toss you off, rather than offer a smooth gliding experience. The primitive wave-making technology was a tumultuous and often perilous endeavor that likely led to more confused falls and bruised egos than memorable surfing moments. It was a valiant pursuit of inland thrill that usually culminated in a disappointing splash. Picture this. You're at a posh soiree in the Victorian era, and the conversation is sparkling. But oh no, you've dropped your fork. Bending down is so uncouth. And what if your corset is too constricting? Worry not, for the reaching tongs for the unwell and well-padded were here to rescue the day. These weren't your typical kitchen tongs. They were often elaborate, elongated grabbers, sometimes spring-loaded, crafted to allow one to pick up dropped objects without the embarrassment of bending down. Although marketed to those with restricted mobility or a more generous figure, one can only envision the clashing noise and potential for toppling wine glasses as diners maneuvered these metallic extensions across the table. It was a form of grace achieved via remote control, a truly refined method to dodge any form of physical exertion. Is the summer sun wearing you out? Feeling a bit overheated? Why not attach a mini air conditioning unit right onto your head? The personal air conditioning hat was an attempt to provide localized climate control for your skull. These wonders of dubious design typically included a cumbersome hat with a built-in fan, sometimes operating on batteries, occasionally featuring a tiny Freon-powered cooling system that likely dripped condensation down your cumbersome neck. You would resemble a character from a low-budget science fiction film with an alarming, potentially loud apparatus awkwardly balanced on your head. Did it work? Perhaps to a slight degree. Did it make you look completely ridiculous? Absolutely. It was the ultimate fashion boldness for the sake of a somewhat cooler forehead, demonstrating that when it comes to dispelling heat, some individuals will attempt just about anything. And there you have it, evidence that sometimes humanity's most brilliant ideas are simply wonderfully disastrous. These historical flops serve as a humorous reminder that progress isn't always a beautiful sight. Now, the burning question. If you had to rely on one of these laughable inventions every day for an entire year, which one would become your personal nightmare and why? Share your torture selection in the comments below. Don't forget to like Spread the Madness and subscribe with the notification bell activated so you never miss out on the next installment of historical hilarity we reveal. Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next episode.